The seas and oceans are the guardians of numerous myths and legends, a vast theatre that has accompanied sailors through the succession of eras. Stories of ghost ships, mythological creatures, and cursed lands weave an intricate blanket of charm and mystery, becoming fundamental pillars of maritime narrative heritage, and also shaping our vision of the sea as a kingdom shrouded in the mysteries of the unknown. These stories exert an irresistible attraction on our imagination, pushing individuals eager to find the truth to embark on challenging the usual order of reality. In the wide waters of the East Indies, where the sun retreats behind the horizon, a merchant ship bears an enigma so surreal that it defies human logic. It is the SS Ourang Medan. But it is the crew of this ship that becomes legend, with their faces contorted in terror, their bodies rigid, and with horror reflected in their eyes, witnesses of a monstrous presence. We are off the coast of Malaysia, in a post-war era when the world was trying to rise from the rubble of the Second World War.
Japanese troops leave for the conquest of Manchuria. Japan, the first of this war's aggressor nations, starting out a full 14 years ago on a career of international conquest and pillage. Shanghai in 1937, full-scale warfare against China. The world was still unready to deal properly with such wanton aggression. Japan's diplomats addressing the League of Nations attempted to justify their crimes against peace and decency, and then walked out.
In the late 1940s, the world was still recovering from a devastating global war that had decimated over 60 million lives. Meanwhile, hidden in the shadows of a hopeful peace, a much more enduring conflict was taking shape that would challenge the world for some 40 years: the Cold War. The East Indies, recently liberated from the Japanese oppressors who invaded them during the Second World War, were now also eager to rid themselves of their European colonizers, who, despite growing tensions, were not discouraged from deploying a massive naval presence for commercial and strategic purposes concerning the whole territory. The Dutch ships were among the most numerous, as this small European power sought to reassert its colonial influence in these lands after Indonesia's declaration of independence with the support of Japan itself. A bloody war inevitably ensued, not only between occupiers and the occupied, but also between the Indonesians themselves. The birth of Indonesia as an independent nation marked the beginning of a new era for the country, for which it had to face significant political, social, and economic challenges, and only in 1949, after a series of international negotiations, did they manage to force the Dutch forces to withdraw. The story of the SS Ourang Medan takes place precisely during this period and in these lands, more precisely in one of the oldest and most crucial navigation routes in the world. We are talking about the Strait of Malacca. Located between the Malay Peninsula and the island of Sumatra, the Strait of Malacca extends along the coasts of Indonesia, Singapore, and Thailand. It represents an essential connection point between the Andaman Sea and the South China Sea, but not only. It is also the major maritime communication route between the Pacific Ocean and the Indian Ocean, thus constituting the main hub of naval traffic between East and West, and the countries in the Persian Gulf with those in Asia, particularly China, Japan, and South Korea. To immerse ourselves in the story of the SS Ourang Medan, it is important to know the stage on which the story is told, namely the Strait of Malacca. The Strait of Malacca has represented a crucial navigation route for the trade of Asian civilizations since ancient times. Indian, Chinese, Arab, and Persian traders transported goods such as spices, silk, porcelain, and precious metals every day, also providing profitable cultural interactions and the exchange of knowledge between different countries and cultures. With the arrival of the European colonial powers in Asia, particularly starting from the 16th century, the Strait of Malacca became a crucial location also for global trade, and not just territorial trade. Colonial powers such as the Portuguese, the Dutch, and the English took control of important strategic positions along the strait, thus ensuring the security of their commercial interests. Today, its importance derives from the fact that it is the second strategic maritime passage for the transport of oil, second only to the Strait of Hormuz, which divides the Arabian Peninsula from the coast of Iran. In 2011 alone, approximately 15 million barrels of oil passed through the Strait of Malacca. The combination of these characteristics makes this strait one of the busiest sea routes in the world. Today alone, a third of world trade passes through it with an annual traffic of 60,000 ships. It effectively becomes an important strategic area. This popular area certainly also attracts many threats. The most dangerous and well-known are the pirate ships. In fact, piracy in the strait is a historical phenomenon dating back to the 14th century, when these nautical acts were used as an important political tool. At the time, many governors relied on pirates to maintain their control over maritime territories, which allowed piracy, through the centuries and even to the present day, to maintain a strong position of activity. And it is in this territory, steeped in conflict, that the story of the SS Ourang Medan comes to life. It is a hot and muggy day. The waters are rough, and the whistle of the winds resonates along the entire coastline of the Strait of Malacca. In this scenario, where nature itself seems to rebel, a mysterious message makes its way through the ether. It is an SOS transmitted in Morse code, which contains the last breath of its author. This unexpected signal reaches the attentive ears of some radio operators, the tireless guardians of the seas, located in some maritime monitoring stations under the English and Dutch flags. The message comes from a mysterious ship, a floating enigma. The SOS is promptly decoded with great precision by the radio operators, revealing a note full of terror and desperation. The message, short and incisive, reads thus: "All officers, including the captain, dead in chart room and on the bridge. Probably whole of crew dead." After a short pause, a second message is picked up: "I die." These words leave those who hear them stunned by their sincere horror. Subsequently, numerous attempts are made to contact the mysterious ship, but they all fail, receiving only the most worrying response of all: radio silence. Chaos breaks out in the monitoring rooms, and those present outline the most uncertain hypotheses about the cause of that message, among which the most credible is that of a pirate attack. All the employees actively work to identify the source of the message. Despite the little information in their possession, they promptly manage to triangulate the source of the signal, thus considerably narrowing the field of action. The related SOS request and presumed position is communicated to all ships present in the vicinity. Two of these, both of American origin, respond to the request for help. In an unspecified point in the Strait of Malacca, the American merchant ship Silver Star proceeds along its usual trade route. However, this normal route is suddenly interrupted by the telecommunications operator, who alerts the captain of an unusual distress call. As soon as he is informed of the disturbing words, the captain issues the order to change course, heading towards the indicated position. Despite the several hours of travel, the distance is significantly shortened, but apparently the marked area appears deserted and silent. The lookout on board meticulously scrutinizes every corner of the horizon until he spots an apparently abandoned ship, with its engines turned off and its chimneys dry, floating lifelessly in the waters. It is found about 50 miles away from the indicated position, and in the eyes of the captain, that ship is classified as an old Dutch merchant ship. As they approach, on the rusty hull, the American sailors can finally read the white and slightly faded writing that illustrates the name of the ship. It is the SS Ourang Medan. The captain begins an initial investigation into the ship's name, contacting nearby ports to discover the origin of the mysterious vessel. To his great surprise, he is informed that the name SS Ourang Medan does not appear in any naval register in the area. The eyes of the entire crew are focused on that mysterious ship, which they now find a short distance away from them. All attempts made to establish initial contact with the Dutch crew prove futile. No signs of life can be seen or heard from the SS Ourang Medan. A strange state of agitation spreads among those present, a sensation arising from the apparently intact conditions of the ship. There is no visible damage that could suggest a pirate hijacking, but this does not explain the persistent radio silence. At this crucial moment, the captain promptly assembles a rescue team of courageous and determined individuals, ready to face the unknown, in hopes of finding the missing Dutch crew. Using some lifeboats, the group manages to reach and board the ship. As soon as they set foot on board, what awaits them shatters their expectations. A cold shiver runs down the backs of the rescuers when, confirming the veracity of the SOS message, they find themselves faced with a terrible reality. Before their eyes, under the high, scorching sun, the deck of the SS Ourang Medan is littered with the inanimate bodies of Dutch sailors. This ship, which was once the beating heart of a sailing vessel, now looks like an open-air cemetery. The silence that reigns on board is deafening and underlines the desolation of the living observing the scene. The American team approaches fearfully to examine the corpses and are immediately horrified by their state. The bodies of the Dutch sailors are found paralyzed in unnatural, contorted poses, as if a dark force had suddenly stolen their last living breath. An expression of terror is carved on each face, a silent cry that marked their tragic end, represented by dilated eyes, mouths wide open in terror, and arms stretched forward as if trying to defend themselves from an invisible threat. One body after another, the horror manifests itself in all its crudeness on every corpse of the Dutch crew. Shocked by the discovery, the rescuers tried to examine the bodies with caution in the hope of finding clues that could justify such an atrocious death. No trace of blood, no bruises, no tears on their clothing are found. At that moment, a single plausible explanation takes shape in their minds. Looking at the faces of the Dutch sailors contorted with horror, it is certain that they saw something so terrifying that it caused them an agonizing death. Among the corpses of the sailors, a dog is also found, but not even he was spared from the terrible fate. Like his fellow sailors, the animal remains petrified, with its teeth bared and its angry eyes in an attacking gaze, as if intent on defending the sailors from an unknown threat. Without finding any indicative traces outside the ship, the American team decides to enter the darkness below deck in search of any survivors. Enveloped in a sense of fear, they cross the watertight door and walk along the long, cold corridors of the ship. The interior of the ship appears like a body without a soul, silent and cold. The ambiguous and constant creaking of the metal joints of the ship accompanies their journey, and in a short time their worries are tragically confirmed. From the darkness of the corridors emerge the last members of the Dutch crew. They then head towards the heart of the ship, the command bridge. Here, another macabre spectacle is revealed to them. The body of the captain of the Ourang Medan, victim of the same terrible fate that befell the ship and his crew, lies on the ground. The officers are dispersed between the wheelhouse and the chart room, silent symbols of an implacable destiny. In the communications room, the young telegrapher who presumably had sent the desperate SOS request is leaning over the technical instruments, also in a contorted and paralyzed position, with his headphones still connected and his fingers still gripping the telegraph. No corner of the Ourang Medan seems to have been spared by the arrival of death, reaching even the most insidious and hidden places of the ship, such as the boiler room, transforming the entire merchant ship into what appears to everybody as a floating tomb. In this scenario, every disturbing detail contributes to thickening the veil of mystery that surrounds this tragic situation. During their exploration, the rescuers notice that there are no visible signs of damage to the ship, even inside. Everything seems to have remained in place, and the hopes of finding any survivors have now vanished. This leads to the entire Dutch crew being declared deceased. But the mystery surrounding their deaths becomes increasingly perplexing as the corpses are entering an advanced state of decomposition, rotting much faster than they would have done under natural conditions. Even the internal temperature of the ship presents something anomalous, since despite the high summer temperatures of June, everyone present feels a strong chill of frost, and with every breath they take, the air condenses. An atmosphere of total confusion and disbelief envelops everyone present, while the revelations discovered generate a sense of total bewilderment. In short, a form of collective anguish spreads, fueled by the growing concern that the same terrible fate could suddenly befall each of them. No one welcomes the idea of staying on board long enough to test this terrifying prospect. At this point, the rescue team hastily returns to the Silver Star, and the revelations of the terrible scenes they have witnessed persuade the captain to direct the Ourang Medan towards the nearest port, in order to facilitate a safer and more thorough investigation into the inexplicable event. The lifeless Dutch merchant ship is hooked with ropes and begins its slow crossing, towed by the Silver Star, towards the coast. Despite the apparently good conditions ascertained both inside and outside the Ourang Medan, a few moments after the start of the towing process, the American crew spots a strange and dense grey smoke emerging from below deck of the merchant ship. Before long, the smoke turns black as sinister flames begin to completely envelop the ship. The captain, sensing the imminent danger, firmly gives the order to cut the tow ropes, thus allowing the Silver Star to promptly move away from the Ourang Medan, which is now engulfed in flames. In an instant, the Dutch freighter explodes, creating a huge fireball that slowly begins to devour her. The detonation is so powerful that it breaks through the hull, and in front of the shocked and perplexed gazes of the crew of the Silver Star, the Ourang Medan is slowly swallowed up by the dark waters, dragging its terrible secrets into the depths of the seas. It is estimated that the depth of the water at that point is around 5,000 meters, an abyss that makes any attempt to further investigate the incident impossible. As one would imagine, after the incident, sinister rumors about the affair spread quickly along the trade routes. However, there still remains an aura of uncertainty about the direction that the story of the Silver Star crew took regarding the incident. Whether it reported the story to authorities in the area or to the shipping company once it returned to the United States. The first official testimonies that shed light on this obscure incident emerged from 3 articles published in February 1948 in the Dutch Indonesian newspaper, The Locomotive, or De Locomotief Samarangs Andelsen Advertentieblad. However, we will examine these articles in more depth later, since the best known and most detailed chapter of this story was revealed in May 1952, when the counsel in the Proceedings of the Merchant Marine, a report on merchant procedures published by the Coast Guard of the United States, reports the disturbing statements released by crew members of the Silver Star. Their words paint a chilling picture of the appearance of the lifeless bodies found on board the Ourang Medan. Their frozen faces were turned towards the sun, staring as if they were frightened. Their mouths were wide open, and their eyes fixed. We find ourselves in the United States of America in the 1950s, an era that coincides with the beginning of the Golden Age, rooted in the basic rules of industrial capitalism, a phase of national prosperity and greater well-being. The increase in national wealth, the advent of the welfare state, urbanization, and the standardization of production create the basis for an extraordinary expansion and growing influence of the American model. Between the 1940s and early 1960s, developments in nuclear science and advances in space exploration significantly influenced design, resulting in a period known as the Atomic Age, a term particularly synonymous with the 1950s, in which we find words that form as abstract organic shapes, stars, galaxies, and atomic particles, all of which become elements rooted in popular culture. The conclusion of the Second World War led to unprecedented development in the economies of industrialized countries. Various sectors of the economy and society of the time benefited from it, such as fashion, entertainment, music, and the world of magazines and comics. In particular, the golden age of science fiction is a period from the 1930s to the early 50s, which saw the science fiction genre gain the attention of a large audience in the United States, and not only. A fundamental role in the creation of this golden age was played by John W. Campbell, a very influential figure in science fiction. Editor of numerous magazines of the genre, Campbell introduced new types of stories, such as those of surreal science fiction, supernatural tales, and stories of mysterious and paranormal phenomena. It is precisely thanks to this context that a year after the publication of the United States Coast Guard report, the story of the SS Ourang Medan landed in the American culture of the early 1950s, intertwining with the cultural and scientific influences of an era that profoundly marked the social and artistic panorama of the post-war period. In the June 1953 issue of Fate magazine, True Stories of the Strange and the Unknown, the acclaimed world magazine of the paranormal, which presents to the public expert opinions and extraordinary experiences related to UFOs, ghosts, and extra-dimensional phenomena, there is a short article entitled Death of Sea, written by journalists and writers Frank Edwards and Robert V. Hulse, in which they bring to light the basic elements of the story of the ill-fated SS Ourang Medan. Not only Fate magazine, but also the 1955 book The Case for the UFO, written by the prolific author and ufologist Morris K. Jessup, echoes this dark tale of the seas. In his book, Jessup proposes a bold hypothesis to solve the enigmas of the SS Ourang Medan, in which he connects the story and the tragic conditions of the crew to a failed military experiment, suggesting that it could be the same study conducted by the US military, known as the Philadelphia experiment. One of the first theories we will analyze to try to investigate and shed light on the mysterious story of the SS Ourang Medan is known as the Philadelphia experiment. This alleged scientific experiment, conducted by the United States Navy, took place a few years before the events linked to Ourang Medan, more precisely in 1943, along the coast of Pennsylvania. Allegedly, the US destroyer USS Eldridge, anchored on October the 28th near the Philadelphia Pier, suddenly vanished into thin air amid a burst of green light. A warship of over 1,500 tons, together with her numerous crew, vanished and soon reappeared about 200 miles away to the south, in the waters near Norfolk, Virginia. But the real twist came when, once it had appeared in Norfolk, the destroyer dissolved into thin air again, as if it had gone back in time, reappearing at its initial starting point in the port of Philadelphia. An event so extraordinary that it captured the attention of many, and triggered a series of investigations and speculations on the matter, especially thanks to the interest of Morris Jessup, a man very passionate about experimental technologies. Jessup attributed this experiment to Albert Einstein, assuming that he had completed the unified field theory together with other mathematicians, also developing an equation that would give access to invisibility, a theory that hypothesizes an interaction between electricity, gravity, and magnetism, and seems to fit the concept of electronic camouflage. The practice of this experiment, it is said, required the help of another great genius, Nikola Tesla. It is claimed that shortly before his death, Tesla contributed to the studies as a member of the team of experts involved in the Philadelphia experiment. In fact, it is claimed that the Navy developed this experiment to test the teleportation technique using enormous coils developed by Tesla himself as a defense weapon against the fearsome Nazi submarines during the Second World War. The Philadelphia experiment is undoubtedly a fascinating mystery, but what connection could it have to the SS Ourang Medan? How did Jessup connect these two apparently separate events that are so distant from each other? In the early 1950s, Jessup finds himself the recipient of a disconcerting letter sent to him by a seemingly ordinary citizen named Carlos Miguel Alende. The contents of the letter seem to share Jessup's interest in unified field theory and claim that the US Navy had already conducted an experiment on a destroyer in 1943. According to Alende, The outcome of this experiment was the complete invisibility of the ship and its crew, an event that took place in just a few minutes. This fact deeply affects Jessup, who puts his heart and soul into his mission to unravel the mystery surrounding the Navy's operations in Philadelphia. But the Navy categorically denies the events and begins to scrutinize, with interest, anyone who dares to discuss them. Carlos's letter reveals another disturbing detail, that is, that there is talk of two separate experiments conducted by the military. The first, although successful in rendering the ship invisible, had a devastating impact on the crew. Despite the concerns raised by this outcome, those responsible decided to proceed with a second experiment, which led to the complete invisibility of both the ship and its entire crew. The sailors were only advised that they were participating in a radar stealth exercise, not a complete physical dissolution of the ship that they were trying to study. Once the experiment starts, the nightmare begins. The unwitting sailors, panicking, find themselves completely disoriented, almost on the verge of madness. Some, struck by terror, throw themselves off the ship in the hope of eventually reaching the waters of the sea, without realizing, however, that they are in a sort of space-time tunnel, a place far from the waters of the port of Philadelphia. The powerful electromagnetic fields used to warp space-time caused the death of various sailors, while others were lost in the continuum of space-time without ever returning home. Many scholars of the case are convinced that on that day not only optical invisibility was tested, but also a kind of time machine. According to the author of the letter, the survivors were forced to sign confidentiality clauses, and those who accepted vanished into thin air, never revealing what truly happened that fateful day. Others were subjected to the technique of hypnosis, with the aim of erasing the terrible experience they had undergone. Carlos Miguel Alende claims to have been an eyewitness to this experiment, as he was aboard another ship called the SS Ourang, located a short distance from the dangerous and uncontrollable Navy experiment. Furthermore, over time, another witness account comes from Alfred Bielek, who says that he was one of the sailors who disappeared in the dimensional leap, and that he was catapulted into the future for 6 weeks, more precisely in the year 2137, and then for 2 years in the year 2749. Jessup links this Philadelphia experiment to the story of the SS Ourang Medan, where it may have been subjected to a similar military experiment and mistakenly teleported into the Strait of Malacca. During this space-time voyage, the Dutch crew members would have faced death with terror, witnessing an encounter with unknown energies invading the ship, an experience so intense as to be fatal. This theory may also explain the lack of the Ourang Medan's name in official records and the terrifying state in which the crew were found. However, at the present time, as happens in many cases in this field, the evidence supporting this theory related to the alleged Philadelphia experiment is mainly based on anecdotal testimonies, second-hand accounts, or unverifiable sources. The US military authorities officially deny the existence and reporting of the Philadelphia experiment, and despite several painstaking independent studies and investigations over the years, no scientific or documentary evidence has yet emerged to confirm the validity of this theory. It is essential to remember that this experiment is widely considered an urban legend or a made-up story with no solid basis in reality. Despite its popularity and its diffusion in popular culture, having also been represented various times in film, there is no concrete evidence or official confirmation that confirms the veracity of the Philadelphia experiment. The Ourang Medan story moves away from the exclusive interest of scholars and mystery enthusiasts to involve even the most famous and discussed spy agency in the world, the CIA. A chapter shrouded in shadow emerges from a top-secret memo dated December 1959, declassified only in May 2003. The memo, sent by C.H. Mark Jr., a CIA agent, reached the hands of Assistant to CIA Director Alan Dulles. In the memo, Mark quotes the report of the proceedings of the Merchant Marine Council. Their frozen faces were upturned to the sun, the mouths were gaping open and the eyes staring. Everyone was dead. Even the ship's dog, a small terrier, was lifeless, his teeth bared in anger or agony. The author of the memo considers the story of the Ourang Medan as a key to revealing countless other maritime mysteries, dating back to texts written as long ago as 216 BC. However, some details emerge from the memo that challenge the commonly accepted version of the story, intriguing elements that add new contours to the main plot. For example, the date of receipt of the distress message is placed in February 1948, thus deviating from the version previously recorded in June 1947. Small but decisive details emerge from the text reported in the letter, such as the thick smoke rising from internal compartment number 4 of the ship and the report of the fact that one of the lifeboats was missing, as if, somehow, someone had found a way to escape that impending drama and tragedy. The fascinating enigma of the Ourang Medan has attracted widespread interest, fueling an intricate web of theories to explain the events. In addition to those previously mentioned, such as the connection with the Philadelphia experiment and the hypothesis of a pirate hijacking, conjectures emerge regarding a possible submarine attack, claiming that this assault led to the death of the crew and the subsequent fire of the merchant ship. However, also in this circumstance, there is a lack of tangible evidence capable of supporting this hypothesis, and it would not justify the atrocious conditions of the bodies discovered by the American Silver Star rescue team. Other fascinating theories propose the hypothesis that the crew of the SS Ourang Medan may have succumbed to supernatural or even extraterrestrial forces, which triggered their sudden and mysterious death. In the realm of paranormal phenomena, there is speculation that the ship experienced inexplicable events linked to demonic presences, ghosts, or other otherworldly entities. According to this suggestive theory, such paranormal forces could have attacked the crew, leading to their premature demise or influencing their psychological state in such a way as to generate extreme terror. The presence of these entities is further suggested by the notable drop in temperature reported by the Silver Star rescue team, a significant detail considering that, despite the high temperatures of the summer, the rescuers felt intense chills, therefore adding more colour in painting an even more enigmatic picture of this mysterious maritime affair. In 1955, Maurice Jessup again put forward another intriguing hypothesis, suggesting that the crew of the SS Ourang Medan may have been the victim of a UFO attack, basing his theory on the apparent lack of natural causes linked to the death of the sailors, the terror on their faces, and the fact that their gazes were all turned towards the sky. The idea of an alien attack proposes the hypothesis that the ship could have been the target of an unknown extraterrestrial race, and it is assumed that these beings from other worlds used advanced weapons or technologies to eliminate the crew, also causing the fire to break out on board. However, the motive for such an attack remains shrouded in mystery, sparking speculation without a definitive answer. In addition to this, ancient legends and myths have emerged that may be connected to the Ourang Medan incident. In many Asian cultures, legends are told of sea spirits or demons capable of sowing terror and death among human beings. Creatures often described as deformed or monstrous, these mythical figures could offer a possible explanation for the mysterious event. However, it is crucial to point out that all these theories based on paranormal phenomena and alleged alien attacks lack the support of concrete evidence or reliable testimonies. These are speculative hypotheses that draw on legendary tales or creative interpretations of the history of the SS Ourang Medan. While fascinating and popular among mystery enthusiasts, these theories do not enjoy academic or scientific acceptance. The immense expanses of seas and oceans that encompass approximately 71% of the Earth's surface are still an unknown realm, shrouded largely in mystery. Humanity, despite its efforts, has explored only 5% of the ocean floor, leaving the remaining 95% shrouded in the deepest darkness. The secret depths of the sea continue to elude our understanding, occasionally revealing new marine species that enrich our biodiversity repertoire, but they remain largely unexplored. The Ourang Medan incident has become fertile ground for theories that draw on ancient myths, such as the hypothesis of a curse that affected the crew. It is said that this supernatural punishment fell on them when they violated a forbidden path or committed an offence against some ancient entity, thus leading them to the tragic fate we all know about. Legends and myths, susceptible to cultural interpretations and variations, are intertwined with folklore and local traditions, lending fascination to the analysis of inexplicable phenomena such as the Ourang Medan incident. A possible connection can be glimpsed with the Pontianak, a mythological figure of Malay culture, a female spirit who wanders at night, causing the death of anyone who crosses her path. Her presence, accompanied by an intense smell of flowers or rotten fruit, may have paralyzed the sailors with terror, their faces frozen in an expression of pure horror. Other connections emerge with the Hantu air, supernatural creatures linked to water in Malay mythology, capable of taking on human or marine guise, considered evil and capable of causing mental disorders or even death to those who dare to venture into their lands. These legends that surround the history of the SS Ourang Medan carry with them a negative and dangerous aura. We can imagine the ship's crew crossing paths with a group of Hantu air in the surrounding waters. These dark creatures emerge from the sea abyss, spreading a strange aura that affects the sailors, completely paralyzing them with terror. Their faces, surprised and terrified, remain petrified as if they have been frozen in a state of eternal fear. The uncertainties and variations in the testimonies add further mystery while leaving many questions unanswered. What exactly the ship was carrying, why she was not present in any official register, and what really happened to the Dutch crew are questions that have fueled debate in the following decades up until the present day. The story of the SS Ourang Medan remains an enigma shrouded in the darkness of the seas, offering food for thought on unknown forces that can influence the affairs of humanity, even if they plough the most remote depths of our planet. In that distant period, the Ourang Medan was a sturdy cargo ship with a wealth of maritime experience and an impressive tonnage capacity of around 5,000 tons. What catches one's attention, however, is her name, which roughly translates from Indonesian as Man of Medan. An unusual choice, considering that ships are often christened with female names. This particular detail raises the hypothesis that the etymology of the name could reveal links with her origin, perhaps rooted in the very territory of the ship. The lack of official documentation on the freighter fuels speculation about its true provenance. Naval archives, including those of the historic British Maritime Classification Society, Lloyd's Register Group Limited, provide no record of the SS Ourang Medan. Even after years of research, Roy Bainton, a reporter for the Fortean Times, a monthly magazine of news and research on strange phenomena, was unable to locate any mention of the vessel in shipping logs or in the Dictionary of Disasters at Sea, covering the years 1824 to 1962. Although the identity of the Silver Star, the ship involved in the rescue attempt, has been confirmed, the absence of details on the Ourang Medan still raises many doubts, and some rumours suggest that the Silver Star never really existed either. In fact, she was originally known as Santa Cecilia under the management of the Grace Line Shipping Company, later renamed Silver Star in 1946 by the United States Maritime Commission, and subsequently renamed Santa Juana until its demolition that occurred in 1971 after being repurchased by the Grace Line Company. The association of the Silver Star with the Ourang Medan affair in 1947 has been the subject of extensive research by scholars, including Bainton. However, no member of the American crew ever disclosed information to the media, adding a further veil of mystery to this enigmatic maritime story. An unexpected twist sheds new light on the story, opening the doors to a completely different chapter from the one previously examined. The starting point is the secret letter from the CIA, a document which, while maintaining the basic plot, introduces a detail that has already been specified, but which will radically change the fate of this story. This crucial turning point is the absence of one of the lifeboats aboard the SS Ourang Medan, a piece of evidence that throws new life into the veins of this intricate marine enigma. On July the 12th, 1947, 3 weeks after the mysterious explosion of the Dutch ship, the sea current carried the missing lifeboat to the coast of the isolated island of Taongi in the Marshall Islands. On board the lifeboat, an incredible story unfolds. 7 survivors of the crew emerge from the sea, but the cruelty of fate has hit them hard. Only one of them, an exhausted man named Jerry Rabbit, manages to reach terra firma alive. Rescued by an Italian missionary and the local indigenous community, Jerry, suffering from shock and illnesses contracted during the dramatic period on the boat, prepares to confess the horror he experienced. Jerry, presumably the second mate of the Ourang Medan, reveals that the ship had stopped in Shanghai on June the 7th, 1947, the starting point of a tragic journey that will go far beyond the horizon of human understanding. Jerry Rabbit's narrative paints a disturbing picture, catapulting the story of the SS Ourang Medan into an even darker and more sinister dimension. Having boarded what appeared to be an ordinary Chinese steamship, Jerry soon becomes aware of a sinister veil of secrecy enveloping the entire ship. The command and officers show a clear reluctance to check documents, and they are suspected of hiding illegal recruits involved in shady deals. Shanghai, a crossroads of cultures and intrigues, becomes the initial stage of a compelling story where the destiny of the Ourang Medan merges with the intricate events of the post-war period. The dark curtain of the Second World War is slowly rising, revealing a panorama steeped in tensions, secrets, and clandestine activities. In this vibrant and mysterious metropolis, the story of the Ourang Medan, a steamship with sinister nuances, comes to life. Jerry Rabbit, trapped in this web of mysteries, is recruited as an officer to help with a shipment of goods to South America. He unknowingly ends up in a tangle of tragedies and secrets on a journey that transforms his experience as a sailor into a living nightmare. On board, the ship holds an enigmatic cargo of 7,000 crates, a fact that immediately fuels Jerry's doubts, but they are doubts that are not welcomed by the ship's captain. On June the 9th, 1947, the Ourang Medan loads an additional 8,000 crates with unknown contents in a port south of Shanghai, to then head towards Costa Rica. But the voyage takes a bleak turn when the ship deviates from its usual routes, crossing the Mariana Islands and the Caroline Islands. The decisive turning point occurs on June the 21st, when the stokers, the beating hearts of the ship, are struck by a sudden illness, and one of them surrenders to the darkness of death. To avoid sowing terror among the crew members, the captain, his face marked by worry, tries to throw a blanket of normality over the tragedy that is slowly enveloping his ship. His explanation, a simple heat stroke, spreads among the sailors like a thin veil of tranquility. But during those dark days of sailing, Jerry Rabbit, with eyes full of suspicion, firmly rejects this reassuring excuse. The situation degenerates when the entire engine room team is struck by an inexplicable illness, tormented by abdominal pain that precedes a frightening fate. In a vortex of terror and mystery, a mysterious malaise unfolds in a spiral of disconcerting events aboard the entire ship, which becomes the silent witness of a growing shadow. Jerry, at this point, launches into a secret investigation into the onboard documents, and what he discovers confirms his initial fears. 15,000 cases of sulfuric acid and cyanide, stored without any precautions, and 20 drums of nitroglycerin, a lethal cocktail, ready to explode. As the poisonous gases spread through the ship like an enveloping nightmare, the crew finds itself at the center of an impending death. The revelation convinces Jerry to face the captain, who, knowing the lethal secret, decides to maintain silence, aware of the implacable punishment that awaits anyone who dares reveal the dark truth hidden on board. Jerry Rabbit, joined by 6 brave sailors, sailed away from the cursed ship in a flimsy lifeboat. As the steamer continued its sinister journey towards Costa Rica, the struggle for survival began on the small, drifting vessel. Without water or supplies, the relentless heat tormented them, turning their escape into a tragic death sentence. The days followed one after another like a torment, the consuming thirst, the scorching sun burning their skin, and desperation making its way through their exhausted faces. 6 shadows were swallowed up by hunger and thirst. Even Jerry Rabbit, the one who had peered into the abyss of the secret of the cargo, was not spared. Jerry's sad tale reached the ears of a missionary who, with a heart full of compassion, watched him slowly die a few days after the rescue. This epic story, shrouded in the aura of horror, reached the ears of the author Sylvio Scari, whose roots are lost in the mists of Trieste. The missionary, custodian of a tale of death and mystery, transported the burden of truth from the stormy ocean to the mainland, where the story of the Ourang Medan will continue to weave its dark destiny. This new version of the incident, which includes a survivor, is described in 3 articles published in February 1948 in the Dutch-Indonesian newspaper The Locomotive. These articles were published 5 years before the US Coast Guard report. The story is reported, however, with some significant differences. The name of the ship that allegedly found the Ourang Medan, the Silver Star, is not mentioned, but the site of the discovery and sinking is indicated to be approximately 400 nautical miles southeast of the Marshall Islands. The name of the survivor is not known, but it seems that he was of German origin. The Locomotive newspaper clearly states that all the information provided comes from Sylvio Scari, and the last article concludes by saying, "This is the last part of our story about the mystery of the Ourang Medan. We must repeat that we don't have any other data on this mystery of the sea, nor can we answer the many unanswered questions in the story." It may seem obvious that the entire story is a fantasy, a thrilling romance of the sea. On the other hand, the author, Sylvio Scari, assures us of the authenticity of the story. The journalist Roy Bainton is conducting extensive research on the subject. This research leads him to a German pamphlet entitled Death Ship in the South Sea, written in 1954 by the writer Otto Mielke. Very precise details emerge from the text that suggest a dark and lethal cargo was being transported illegally, and how this caused the death of the Dutch sailors. All this information suggests that Mielke was indeed one of the crew members of the Silver Star. Mielke mentions a mixed and lethal cargo on the Ourang Medan, composed of nitroglycerin, potassium cyanide, and other nerve agents, and how seawater managed to penetrate the hold of the ship, causing a deadly reaction and release of toxic gases. These would have caused the entire crew to be poisoned or asphyxiated to the point of death. Bainton comments, "There is a tantalizing and plausible explanation for the crew's death and disappearance from the records." These chemicals may also have caused the fire and explosion following the attempted rescue mission conducted by sailors from the Silver Star. This story also corresponds to the version told by the fugitive Jerry Rabbit, and subsequently told by Sylvio Scari and reported in the Indonesian newspaper. Bainton speculates that the shipment of these extremely illegal chemicals was secretly taken from the United States, and that the government intended to erase all evidence of the Ourang Medan's existence. If we accept, due to the nature of her crew's deaths, that she was carrying deadly gas or chemicals, and if indeed she was a Dutch vessel, had this news broken, it would have been a major embarrassment for any government involved, especially in light of the Geneva Convention. Hence the dead ends faced by any researcher. The story exists because, like the gases, it escaped. So, by gathering all these elements together, we can reconstruct the probable timeline of events of this tragic incident. The crew of the Ourang Medan were involved in smuggling operations of dangerous chemicals, including a combination of potassium cyanide and nitroglycerin, and or supplies of weapons of war containing nerve agents. Seawater infiltrated the ship's hold, reacting with the cargo and releasing toxic gases that caused the asphyxiation and poisoning of the entire crew, thus leading to their deaths. Subsequently, the seawater reacted with the nitroglycerin, causing a fire and explosion that destroyed the ship. The true provenance of these nerve agents, however, immerses us in a shocking and sad chapter in the history of the Second World War, highlighting all the human atrocities committed during that period. The SS Ourang Medan may have been transporting another extremely dangerous substance called tabun. This highly toxic nerve agent was produced on a large scale by Germany during the Second World War and widely distributed to their Japanese allies. After the war, the Western Allies undertook efforts to recruit numerous German scientists to counter the Soviets, offering them favourable conditions in exchange for collaboration and information. This initiative was aimed at obtaining important and secret war resources, including tabun, in advance. It is believed that once the war ended, this substance was secretly transported to the United States. Some high officials may have covered up the tragic story of the Ourang Medan, aware of the smuggling of this substance considered illegal and used during the war by the infamous Unit 731 of the Japanese Army. Unit 731, a Japanese secret organization operating during World War II, was founded in 1937 and was based in Harbin, Japanese-occupied Manchuria. Led by Lieutenant General Shiro Ishii, a former Japanese army doctor, its primary mission was biological warfare research and experimentation on humans. Unit 731's distorted view of scientific research led it to believe that human experiments were crucial to the development of effective biological weapons. Prisoners of war, including Chinese, Koreans, Russians, and Japanese citizens, endured horrific experiments, including vivisections without anesthesia, infections with deadly diseases such as smallpox and the bubonic plague, as well as exposure to chemical and biological agents. After the war, the United States granted immunity to the scientists of Unit 731 in exchange for information through the intelligence operation known as the Biological Data Exchange. To link this story to the incident of the Dutch merchant ship Ourang Medan, some theories suggest a link between Unit 731 and the mysterious event of 1947. It is speculated that the Ourang Medan may have transported secret material, including developed biological and chemical samples from Unit 731. However, according to the Geneva Protocol of 1925, all chemical and biological weapons are prohibited in warfare. If such substances were indeed transported, it would have taken place in the utmost secrecy, with an improperly registered vessel and a foreign crew. Records of the trip were allegedly withheld or altered to allow the government to hide its involvement. The story of the Ourang Medan emerges as an unsolvable puzzle, with contradictory dates and details adding further confusion to the search for the truth. However, a surprising revelation casts further doubt on the credibility of the events, particularly the timeline of events. In the archives of British newspapers, an intriguing article stands out, published by the Yorkshire Evening Post and dated the 21st of November 1940. The article, entitled Mystery SOS from Death Ship, offers a further perspective that could shed light on hitherto unexplored aspects of the Ourang Medan affair. Explosions were repeated. Soon nothing was left of the Ourang Medan but a blazing hulk. The next day the fire burned itself out, and the steamer went under, her secret with her. The Ourang Medan had sent out an SOS, and the message, "Send doctor, urgent." SOS from the steamship Ourang Medan. Beg ships with shortwave wireless, get touch, doctor. With our shortwave set, we relayed the call for help. Medical stations in Germany, Rome and France replied. We informed the Ourang Medan and asked her to transmit her request. This version of the story, apparently 7 years earlier, raises a compelling question. Why are so many articles so sure that the event occurred between 1947 and 1948? But the inconsistencies do not end there. Other details emerge that suggest the dubious origin of this story. The same facts are reported by two authoritative English newspapers, the Daily Mirror and the Hampshire Telegraph, both published in the same period, in November 1940. The consistency of the details gives rise to the suspicion that the Ourang Medan story of 1947 may be a narrative taken from an authentic event, but exaggerated over time. In the English article, the words emerge that attest to the actual existence of the Ourang Medan ship and its request for help, but with a surprising time gap, not in 1947, but in 1940. The fragmentary account of this tragic episode paints a picture of repeated explosions, an all-consuming fire that reduces the ship to a burning carcass, and a desperate plea for a doctor to be sent on board. There are a few crucial details that differ from the best-known version of the incident published after the war. In the 1940 article, grisly details about the appearance of the deceased crew are missing, and the name of the ship that came to the rescue is never mentioned, an aspect that appears to have been added later with the reference to the Silver Star. The location of the discovery is also different. In the 1940 report, the ship was identified southeast of the Solomon Islands, unlike the 1947 version, which places it about 400 nautical miles east of the Marshall Islands. What can we deduce from this intricate story? Sylvio Scari could be the key to solving the mystery of the SS Ourang Medan. It is said that the Italian writer heard the story told in Trieste around 1940 by a missionary who, in turn, had learned the details from a member of the crew, probably a German, a year earlier. This sailor allegedly discovered the dangerous unregistered cargo, which released deadly chemical vapors, intoxicating the entire crew until their deaths. However, the origin of this cargo remains a mystery. Scari, immediately realizing the potential of the story, hoped to gain the desired notoriety, but his efforts were overshadowed by the important and impending events of the Second World War. Once the conflict was over, Scari decided to bring the story back to light, expanding it and adding peculiar details. In 1949, an article written by Sylvio Scari himself was published in a Dutch-Indonesian newspaper, which repeated the same terrible story. However, the crux persists. If the SS Ourang Medan truly existed, it was first reported that it sunk in 1939, not 1947 or 1948. If this information is true, there should be no record of a desperate rescue attempt by the Silver Star. The origins and credibility of this story are shrouded in uncertainty. Details remain blurry and concrete evidence is absent. No original or verified images of the SS Ourang Medan or the incident itself have been found. All visual representations in the articles are purely speculations on the possible appearance of the ship. Despite the efforts of researchers such as Professor Theodor Seesdorfer of Essen, Germany, they have failed to confirm the accuracy of the facts or even the very existence of the ship. No official records were found in Lloyd's shipping records or marine accident investigation files. Therefore, the truth continues to elude us, as a web of uncertainties is woven around the story of the Ourang Medan. The dates of the SOS message, the location of the ship's discovery, and the presumed presence of survivors or castaways on an atoll in the Marshall Islands remain unsolved issues, shrouded in persistent mystery. Information on the SS Ourang Medan affair remains mostly limited to second-hand accounts, shaped and modified over the years. This story has evolved, becoming the subject of numerous theories and speculations, but it is crucial to remember that legends and myths can adapt to current circumstances or popular narratives. The story of the SS Ourang Medan may have been expanded or distorted over the years through oral or written accounts. However, it is difficult to discount the fact that this dark fairy tale of the ocean, shrouded in an aura of mystery for over 50 years, has captured the attention of countless scholars and enthusiasts to this day. In 2019, the English video game company Supermassive gave shape to this story with the horror game The Dark Pictures, Man of Medan, inspired by the events of the Ourang Medan. There is more to this than just a made-up story, and we therefore cannot rule out the possibility that something truly dramatic happened to this unfortunate Dutch crew. We shall leave you with the final words of the top-secret memo sent by the CIA agent C.H. Mark Jr. Yes, the enchanting sea, what terrifying secret does it hold? I feel sure that the SS Ourang Medan tragedy also holds the answer to this secret. A key element of convergence between all these versions emerges in Trieste, Italy. Here, in 1940, the original story takes shape, linked to a certain Sylvio Scari, who may have conceived and initially reported the episode to British newspapers. Later, faced with the failure of the story, Scari may have reworked it, adding mysterious elements, before publishing it in 1948 in a Dutch newspaper. The hypothesis of a well-orchestrated hoax becomes plausible. It is possible that Sylvio Scari is the only figure capable of explaining how truth has mixed with fantasy over time.